In early 1965, deep in the jungles of Vietnam's central highlands, a group of Montagnard warriors silently emerged from dense foliage, faces painted in tiger-like camouflage, rifles slung low. They moved with lethal precision. But their leader was not a Montagnard tribesman, nor a seasoned Vietnamese officer. He was Barry Petersen, a tall, formidable Australian Army captain whose reputation had grown so legendary among the locals that he was now known simply as the Tiger Man. But how did Barry Petersen, born in Australia in 1935 and raised in the quiet streets of Serena, Queensland, become an enigmatic figure commanding hundreds of Indigenous guerrilla fighters deep in Vietnam? Petersen's extraordinary military journey began upon his graduation from officer training on the 17th of December 1954. Initially, serving as a platoon commander with the 1st Battalion Royal Australian Regiment, he saw active service in combat in Malaya from 1959 to 1961. During this time, Petersen encountered the indigenous Jahai and Timur tribes, members of the Rangasili, in the mountainous border regions between Malaya and Thailand. This exposure to indigenous guerrilla tactics proved pivotal, shaping Petersen's understanding of tribal warfare and making him uniquely qualified for the events that would soon unfold. Upon returning to Australia in the early 1960s, Petersen was approached directly by Army headquarters. They requested he volunteer for specialised liaison training, preparing him for guerrilla warfare support in anticipated future conflicts. This select training was intense, involving the notorious Code of Conduct course at the Australian Army Intelligence Centre in Sydney, dubbed informally as the School of Torture. There, Petersen endured brutal training, including simulated forced torture, interrogation resistance, and survival methods designed to prepare him for extreme environments. His extraordinary aptitude and resilience caught the attention of senior military and intelligence officials, resulting in his posting in 1962 to the elite Australian Army Training Team, which would later become the Training Team Vietnam, a specialised unit operating directly under CIA command. Petersen's assignment was dauntingly ambiguous: to recruit, train, and lead a guerrilla-style Indigenous fighting force from Vietnamese Montagnard tribes to counter growing communist threat posed by the Viet Cong. Petersen quickly established his base of operations in Dalat province, near the Cambodian border, an isolated and dangerous area, thick with insurgency activity. Embracing Montagnard culture wholeheartedly, Petersen built profound trust with the local people, demonstrating genuine respect for their traditions and dignity. Within a year, he had raised the Trong Song Force. Initially numbering several hundred fighters, funded and equipped by the CIA, the force quickly proved devastatingly effective. Petersen adopted the distinctive tiger-striped camouflage uniforms provided by the agency, giving birth to the legendary name the Tiger Men. He amplified their fierce reputation with specifically designed tiger head beret badges, unifying his fighters around a potent symbol of strength and unity. Yet, even as Petersen's military successes multiplied, the seeds of tension within the CIA were quietly being sown. His dedication to the welfare of the Montagnards and his insistence on maintaining their independence would soon clash dramatically with the American intelligence objectives, especially the CIA's dark ambition for Petersen to transform the Tiger Men into covert assassination teams under what would later become known as the notorious Phoenix program. When Barry Petersen first arrived in Vietnam's Central Highlands in late 1962, the region was rapidly deteriorating to chaos. The Montagnard tribes, indigenous mountain people, were caught between the brutal Viet Cong insurgency and the often ruthless response of South Vietnamese military forces. Petersen's initial mission, directed and funded by the CIA, was to unite these fiercely independent tribes into an effective guerrilla force aimed at defending villages and countering communist forces. Drawing upon his prior experience with indigenous tribal fighters during his service in Malaya, Petersen understood that building trust was paramount. Rather than operating from a distance, he fully immersed himself in Montagnard life, adopting their customs, clothing and rituals, quickly mastering their languages and traditions. His genuine willingness to respect their culture won the admiration and fierce loyalty. By 1964, Petersen had successfully transformed his fighters into the Trong Dong Force, now numbering several hundred guerrillas. Under Petersen's leadership, the force conducted overt and covert operations, psychological warfare through propaganda dissemination, intelligence gathering, and direct military action against the Viet Cong. He established strict training procedures lasting 6 to 8 weeks to ensure discipline, skill, and loyalty. The Trong Thong Force rapidly built an extraordinary reputation for effectiveness, inflicting severe damage on Viet Cong forces with minimal losses to their own. Petersen's leadership was highly effective and unusually independent, empowered by the ambiguous brief provided by the CIA. Despite his junior rank as an Australian Army captain, he was entrusted with extraordinary responsibility and autonomy. However, his independence would soon become a source of tension. The CIA began pressuring Petersen to shift his focus of his force towards the covert assassination of suspected Viet Cong members as part of the controversial Phoenix program, an initiative designed to disrupt communist leadership through targeted killings. Petersen staunchly refused the CIA's request, believing it was morally incorrect and would dangerously undermine the unity and effectiveness of his Montagnard fighters. He stood firm on protecting the integrity and purpose of his troops, ensuring they remained a legitimate guerrilla force focused on combat, protection and support, not assassinations. This resistance deeply frustrated the CIA, marking the beginning of a serious rift between Petersen and American intelligence officials. Despite these growing tensions, Petersen continued leading with determination and compassion. His refusal to compromise the ethics and traditions of the Montagnards only strengthened their respect for him. The fighters revered Petersen, eventually naming their second major base, Dan San, in his honour, a legendary raid warrior who was victorious in every battle and unbeatable by any except the Spirit of the Sun. By late 1964, Petersen had not only forged an effective fighting force, but had also navigated a significant Montagnard rebellion, earning him the Distinguished Military Cross for his bravery, negotiation skills, and exceptional leadership under extreme personal risk. He was also awarded the South Vietnamese Cross for Gallantry with a Silver Star, further highlighting his achievements and commitment. By early 1965, Barry Petersen had reached the height of his influence deep within Vietnam's Central Highlands. His guerrilla force had expanded dramatically to around 1,200 fighters. The Trong Thong Force, fiercely loyal to Petersen personally, continued their highly effective raids against Viet Cong units, earning a fearsome reputation across the region. His guerrilla warfare tactics were highly unconventional, yet undeniably effective. He utilised psychological warfare to disrupt enemy morale, laying ambushes and conducting operations that strategically terrified Viet Cong forces. Petersen's fighters conducted daring long-range patrols, sabotaged enemy supply lines, freed Montagnard captives, and gathered crucial intelligence. However, Petersen's growing autonomy and his principled refusal to adopt CIA directives, specifically concerning the Phoenix program, deepened frustrations within American intelligence. To the CIA, Petersen's defiance appeared as a dangerous consolidation of personal power, fueling fears of his supposed independence evolving into something more threatening, a parallel to the fictional Colonel Kurtz from Heart of Darkness. This comparison, though not justified by Petersen's actions, emerged within intelligence circles due to his perceived autonomy, charismatic leadership, and apparent disregard for higher authority. CIA operatives began covert surveillance and infiltration attempts within Petersen's ranks, assessing his true loyalties and intentions. They grew increasingly resentful, questioning why an Australian officer, not an American, had gained such profound influence over the Montagnard tribes and achieved success where American operatives had struggled. Petersen himself remained firmly committed to his mission, unaware at first of how severely relations had deteriorated. Yet the situation was becoming increasingly precarious. His refusal to bend to the CIA pressure regarding assassination teams and the Phoenix program had transformed Petersen from a trusted asset into a perceived liability. By mid-1965, the CIA was actively considering options to regain control over the Trong Thong Force by removing Petersen entirely if necessary. By late 1965, Barry Petersen's position had become increasingly precarious. His guerrilla force, now fully recognised as Tigermen, had achieved remarkable military success, significantly disrupting Viet Cong operations in the Central Highlands. American officials increasingly accused him of establishing a personality cult due to his exceptional influence and near total autonomy. The agency questioned why an Australian officer, not an American, was entrusted with such significant responsibility, especially since he refused to fully align with their clandestine objectives. As tensions escalated, the CIA began systematically undermining Petersen's authority. Funding streams were interrupted, communications deliberately disrupted, and surveillance intensified. Petersen's phone lines were tapped, his mail intercepted, and restrictions placed on his movements, notably banning him from returning to the Ban Mi Doc province, where his primary base was located. At one point, suspicious items, including Vietnamese code-breaking materials, were covertly planted in his belongings to arouse suspicion among Allied officials and cast doubt on his loyalty. Recognising the growing threat, Petersen repeatedly attempted to clarify his position and affirm his loyalty directly with his senior commanders. However, the CIA's patience had run out. In late 1965, the decision was made at the highest levels to remove Petersen from command. This decision was presented to Petersen abruptly and coldly during an official but tense visit to his jungle base. Petersen was informed that he was relieved of his command, accused directly of insubordination and a dangerous level of independence incompatible with American strategic interests. The confrontation could have ended violently. Petersen commanded total loyalty over 1,000 heavily armed Montagnard fighters who would unquestionably defend him. Yet Petersen deliberately avoided escalation, ordering his men to stand down and accepting his removal peacefully to avoid catastrophic conflict. His quiet dignity, even in betrayal, reinforced the respect and loyalty of his men. As Petersen was escorted from the Central Highlands, his Montagnard fighters and local villagers openly mourned the loss of their leader. Despite the extraordinary farewell from his Montagnard allies, Petersen left under a shadow of mistrust and betrayal, fully aware that his true adversaries were not in the jungles, but within the offices of the CIA. Barry Petersen's forced departure in early 1966 marked a painful turning point. Despite his extensive successes, including earning the Distinguished Military Cross and the South Vietnamese Cross of Gallantry with a Silver Star, Petersen was removed from command, largely due to his unwavering refusal to implement the CIA assassination-focused Phoenix program. The CIA struggled to maintain control over the Trong Thong force. Without Petersen's leadership, the unity and effectiveness of the guerrilla fighters quickly deteriorated, just as he had predicted. The cohesion and motivation he had cultivated through respect and loyalty rapidly dissolved. This outcome validated Petersen's warnings to the CIA, though his superiors never acknowledged the strategic error of removing him. Even as he relocated temporarily to Singapore, prevented initially from returning to Australia due to media curiosity about his highly secretive operations, Petersen's legacy endured strongly in Vietnam. High-ranking Vietnamese leaders, including Huy Bang Thong Ro of South Vietnam, personally wrote requesting Petersen's return, highlighting the continued respect and desperate need for his unique skills and leadership. Despite these heartfelt appeals, Petersen's relationship with the American intelligence was irreparably damaged. His return to Vietnam, particularly the Central Highlands and Montagnard region, was strictly prohibited. Petersen, despite his extraordinary contributions and sacrifices, became a figure of mistrust and controversy within the intelligence community. He was promoted to Major in 1965, recognising his extraordinary contributions to the Montagnards. In April 1970, Petersen returned to Vietnam with the 2nd Battalion, Royal Australian Regiment, or Touraya, commanding Charlie Company, around 140 men strong. His aggressive leadership once again proved remarkably effective, notably demonstrated by a covert operation where his company successfully trailed a Viet Cong unit through dense jungle terrain, scattering a force of 120 enemy fighters after a 15-kilometre pursuit. His tactical brilliance earned him another decoration, the 2nd Silver Star of the South Vietnamese Cross of Gallantry. However, Petersen's distinguished second tour was marred by a severe transport accident, resulting in spinal injuries and hospitalisation. While still recovering, he was personally requested by the Australian ambassador, A.M. Morris, to return covertly to the Montagnard regions in the Central Highlands, despite strict CIA restrictions. Petersen accepted the dangerous mission, travelling unarmed with only one other soldier to gather intelligence, demonstrating his unmatched commitment and bravery. Following Vietnam, Petersen continued serving internationally. In 1972, he took up an instructor role with the Malaysian Army. Yet even in this supposedly peaceful assignment, Petersen found himself again embroiled in dangerous intrigue. He discovered Soviet operatives monitoring his activities, suspiciously lingering around his residence. Later, Petersen faced direct threats when an unknown group contacted him, demanding military secrets for money, explicitly threatening his life should he refuse. Petersen reported this frightening event to Malaysian authorities, but the identity and true intentions of this group remain unknown. In 1975, Petersen returned to Australia, eventually achieving the rank of Lieutenant Colonel, before retiring later that year, predominantly due to lingering injuries from his earlier accident. Throughout his later years, Petersen confirmed being approached several times by shadowy figures seeking his expertise for involvement in foreign coups and covert operations. But consistently, Petersen refused these offers, maintaining a clear ethical boundary, knowing well the moral and political complexities involved. Barry Petersen passed away in 2019, leaving behind a profound yet complex legacy, defined by extraordinary bravery, principled resistance, and a lasting loyalty to those he commanded. His story endures not as one of madness or betrayal, but as an enduring reflection on moral integrity, loyalty, and the ambiguous nature of warfare and alliances in conflicts so few truly understood. I hope you like this story, and if so, please don't forget to like and subscribe. I look forward to catching you in the next one.